I ask you, should a man be held accountable for views he expressed years ago? When does an opinion become more than just an opinion? When you're Michael Johnson, track god, then your opinion carries the weight of law.
You best watch what you say about Michael Johnson. That man recovered from a stroke. A stroke, you hear? And he even did that in record time. See?
Preach! Testify! Now this may seem like a Michael Johnson bash, and not the birthday kind, but I'm just analysing his analysis. Now when you're in a position of authority and your accolades have compressed your humility.
Hi, this is Michael Johnson, double Olympic gold medalist, world record holder in the 200, world record holder in the 400, first man to be ranked #1 in the world in the 200 and 400, first man to be world champion in the 200 and 400. I could go on and on and on.
You'll speak with a certainty that the average person hears as truth, but tone is not truth. Evidence is. You must be damn sure that what you're saying is accurate. Otherwise, some YouTuber somewhere someday might just challenge your veracity.
Rest a sec. How many YouTube awards have you won? You can't even keep a regular upload schedule.
So here's the background. Post-athletics career, Michael Johnson started exercising his chops in the commentary and analysis game for the BBC. Now, with his credentials,
ranked #1 in the world in the 200 and 400, first man to be world champion in the 200 and 400, I could go on and on and on.
we'd assume he'd be a powerhouse of knowledge on sprinting, and the BBC's mandate is to inform, educate and entertain. So it's the Beijing World Championships in 2015, and Johnson,
that's Mr. Johnson to you,
is holding track court with high tech by analysing 3 races, and he's put himself together a tidy little prosecution. He strides confidently over to this new state-of-the-art TV. It's basically a smart TV.
Smarter than you.
Buttoning up his jacket while in mid-gait to show that he means business. In this kangaroo court, Miss Logan, simultaneous judge, co-counsel and emotional barometer of the British Isles.
Very disappointed the British record holder seemed to completely mismanage his race.
Begins by pronouncing James Desaiolu guilty of poor performance due to race mismanagement. Johnson, lead prosecutor, concurs. Here are the facts. James's PB is 9:91, which is faster than the winning time of the heat, granted. It was won in 9:92, so he'd have had to equal his personal best just to win the heat. However, he ran that in 2013, which was 2 years prior. The year before, his season's best was 10 dead, and a month earlier, he ran 10.12 into a headwind. In this race, he ran 10.13, 0.01 seconds slower. Not ideal, and potentially revealing an issue with his peaking that Michael could discuss. However, James would have qualified with that time in 2 out of the 7 heats. In his heat though, he'd have had to have run 0.09 seconds faster than he'd run all season to qualify. He actually missed out on qualification though as a fastest loser by again 0.01 seconds. A slither of time that might have been saved if James had been able to use the advanced skill of tunnel vision. Again, something that Johnson could have referred to. But Ms. Logan decides to frame the discussion from the outset as Mr. Desaiolu's incompetence, like he's some banker who crashed the economy. Now, silly me, I thought the setup here was that Gabby was a proxy representing the ignorant audience at home, and Michael was the expert who's going to give context and is going to inform and educate as per mandate. But I'm the fool, because Logan and Johnson are playing bad cop, worse cop with an invisible Desaiolu who's scared, beaten and handcuffed to a chair. Michael comments that James got a very good start and was very far forward, more than he wanted to be.
far forward. He's really far forward, probably more than he wanted to be, but he ends up
more than he wanted to be. So the first thing that Micheals created is the idea that there's some detriment to being ahead in the race due to a great lean. Now, do you know the telltale sign of a biased prosecution? When the prosecutor takes evidence that would normally be a virtue and presents it as a weakness because he can't convict on the facts. It suggests a real lack of culpable evidence. And as a man who held the world record for the 200 meters in 1932 but couldn't break 10 dead for the 100, you might want to reconsider the notion that there's a problem with a faster acceleration.
Oh, what? Now you're giving sprint tips to Michael Johnson? What's next? Dunk tips to Michael Jordan?
Well, the lean determines the need for acceleration. So the greater the lean, the more need there is to accelerate to avoid face planting. Michael comments that he's leading the race at 5.40 seconds, but that's roughly 50 meters. Let me Johnny Cochranize this for you. If you're leading the race, that's the best place. Now the line that crosses the track is the 2,000 meter steeplechase start and is roughly the 80 meter mark. And this is confirmed by the fact that the clock says 8 seconds. Michael, then playing amateur psychologist, makes, in my opinion, a horrible false assumption as to what James is thinking. He claims he thinks he has the race won, and so now he's slowing down. He says James is looking over at 60 meters while showing a close-up of James looking over. However, this is inaccurate. James is looking over, first with his eyes, then with his whole neck, but at 80 meters. Now, as to the reason he's looking over, who knows what goes through a man's mind? But if I was trying to do my own cold read, I'd find it more plausible that his eyes wandered over reflexively because he detects the fast-finishing American in his peripheral vision. That's not a conscious decision. That's a predator-prey reflex. It's the same way that if you walk past somebody really quickly when they're not expecting it, they look. Now, is it optimal to look over? No. In a perfect world, in a perfect race, you'd be encapsulated in your lane, zen-like, meditating on your heartbeat and understanding the truth that really there is no spoon. But is it understandable? Well, I'd proffer yes. And is it complacency or arrogance? No. Perhaps, though, Johnson can only look at this through his own lens, and that says more about Johnson's psychology than Desaolu's. James then turns completely because the American, who's reached a higher top speed after James has already hit his top speed and is now decelerating, because that's what happens when you hit top speed, blows past him. If you're decelerating while your rival's hitting top speed, the visual effect is striking. What I find unsettling is that an ex-professional athlete like Michael can fudge the details of the race to create a narrative that the evidence just doesn't support. It takes a top-class sprinter 3.5 seconds to get from 60 to 100 meters. Johnson has James turning his head and covering that distance in 2 seconds. According to Johnson math, if James did that, he just ran 44 miles per hour. He's just become the fastest man on earth. And Logan's standing there, disappointed. Talk about hard to please. Johnson then sticks the boot in with unbelievable this and unbelievable that. Let me tell you what I find unbelievable. That Johnson misused science to convict this poor British runner in the court of public opinion. He made up his view from his feelings and then misrepresented and ignored data to justify it. He's acting like some crooked DA in the US. Thank God he didn't go into law enforcement. He'd start a race war. Was this James's best race? No. But this is shameful coaching analysis. Yeah, you finesse the facts sometimes, but that's to save the athlete's esteem and confidence. You don't fictionalize the facts and then kick them when they're down.
Well, Johnson isn't James's coach, is he? So shut up.
You're right, he isn't his coach. He's a respected authority figure who use technology as a sleight of hand to distort data and condemn. And for what? It's not riveting to watch fair and balanced commentary? The audience tunes out unless someone's getting stomped? I thought that the BBC's mission statement was to inform, educate and entertain.
He did inform.
Misinform.
He did educate.
Miseducate.
Well, he's very entertaining. That's more than I can say for you. Where's your BBC contract?
Okay, true. Everyone makes mistakes. Maybe Johnson just got the wrong end of the stick. Or he wasn't given enough time to analyse the data, and that's why he rushed to judgment. So let's take a look at the next analysis. Usain Bolt. He spends his time criticising Bolt's lateral movement and how it's inefficient and wastes energy. Johnson moves from prosecutorial misconduct to bias expert witness. Now, does Usain have an imbalance in his shoulders left to right? Yes. This is because he has a bend in his spine called scoliosis. But Usain also has a greater range of movement in his shoulder girdle. Johnson says that he's collapsing on each side, which isn't correct. He's got an elevated left scapula, which means that the left shoulder is raised. He's not collapsing on the right side though. He's just working with his biomechanical setup. He can't change that, and trying to control his lateral shift when he has a joint issue will actually waste more energy than steering into it and using it to generate momentum through his fascial slings. Now, I know that I'm a big one for biomechanics, so you might accuse me of singing a different tune.
Turncoat! Hypocrite! Judas!
The thing about biomechanics is that it's complex. If you do the basics correctly, you get some leeway with the performance. But the downside to the leeway is risk of injury. So does Usain do the basics correctly? He has great range of movement in his hips and shoulders. He's also mirroring what he's doing with the prime movers, the shoulders, and the consequential joint, the elbow and hand on both sides. The difference is he has a pronounced lateral shift to the right when his right arm drives back and his left arm drives forward due to the curvature of his thoracic spine. The lateral shift is a compensation to his spinal setup, and trying to control that in race would be more detrimental than just flowing and using the fascial slings that do work very effectively for him to rebound his kinetic energy. Now, could this be rectified in the off-season with chiropractic adjustments and a complete rebalancing training program? Possibly, but probably not, because he's already had significant intervention from specialists. Would it make him run faster? Well, there's a small percentage chance, but I think that there's an equal chance it could actually also make him run slower and create compensations at a different point of the kinetic chain that would cause more devastating injuries. This then becomes a risk versus reward analysis. The risk of significant intervention might produce a benefit, but the unforeseen downside could give a catastrophic injury. This is the conflict of perfectionism with sufficientism.
Made up word. Doesn't count.
The philosophy here is that you've got to work with what you've got, and at a point after you've tried, respect the solution that the human organism has come up with to solve the problem. You can influence biomechanics, but the better the person performs, the more cautious you have to be with your interventions. Now, you might get the shoulder movement completely even and then find they tear their Achilles tendon because you didn't account for the effect that your intervention had on their L5-S1. And your great biomechanical result ends up creating a compensation in the lower back, which squeezes the sciatic nerve, causing a constriction and tightness, which ends up snapping at the weakest point, the Achilles. And that is a career destroyer.
Yeah, well, at least as they're hobbling around on crutches, they don't have wasted lateral movement.
I find it difficult to not see patriotic bias in Johnson's analysis as he compares the jerky Jamaican to the anatomically adept American, because this is an issue Johnson himself had in his early career. Johnson was criticised for having low knee carriage and a very upright style. Johnson was also injured repeatedly in successive seasons. A worse coach would have tried to change him, quoting the wisdom of the day that his style was inefficient and was even responsible for his injuries. The latter was true. But Clyde Hart didn't. Johnson's results were great, but his biomechanical setup meant that his hamstrings were injury prone. So rather than changing his running style, they strengthened his limiting factor. Had Johnson coaching Johnson, all those accolades that he's so proud of
Double Olympic gold medalist, world record holding the 200, world record holding the 400.
would have gone to someone else. But Johnson's coach managed his biomech and optimized it. Bolt's done the same. He worked around the issue and reduced its impact. It gave him an unorthodox and imbalanced shoulder movement, but it didn't affect his gait. Monkeying around trying to change his shoulders and reduce lateral movement would put him more into the sagittal plane. It seems like it would improve his performance, but scoliosis is a lateral bend of the spine. No matter what, his skeletal setup has put him in the lateral plane. So better, in my opinion, to work with what you have. Aiming for perfection is worthy, but for the body, it's personal perfection, not public perfection. The key is to make yourself as perfect as you can be, given what you bring to the table. Not make yourself perfect by someone else or some theoretical model's standards. Perfection is relative to you. But Michael presents an unbalanced assessment, not comparing Bolt to Bolt, but comparing Bolt's negatives against Gatlin's positives.
Exactly. And who won the final? Liar! Fake news! Jamaican bots hacking the IAAF!
And were the season's best to boot, despite all that lateral waste. Analysing athletes' biomechanics isn't just about spotting things that are asymmetrical. I mean, any 12-year-old with a slow motion function on a camera and a ruler can do that. It's about understanding why he has it and considering the risk versus reward impact of intervention. In my opinion, for what it's worth, Usain's lateral thoracic shift isn't reducing his performance because it's localized to the thoracic area and it's not translating or creating a drop in the hip, which is where the performance is made or broken. It's basically a visual red herring. Usain is perfect for Usain. So we then get to the third of Michael's insights. Trevon Bromell, a young American sprinter. This is a lesson in technique, which is amazing, blah, blah, blah. So ignore the fact that he doesn't have full extension of the shoulder girdle out of the blocks. That might be a choice. But this kid is from Baylor University, which is Johnson's old university. And he's on the international TV saying this kid could truly be the future of American sprinting. Johnson starts acting like some luxury car salesman. He's selling the plush trim and the extra features and ignoring the wonky wheel. He thinks that a pretty looking runner is going to win the race. This is just not the case, and also the problem with his philosophy. Trevon is neat, he's compact, he's efficient in his movement, he's an excellent sprinter to reach that level. However, he's externally rotated on his left leg as he makes contact with the ground. That's coming from the hip, and that pelvic imbalance in the sprints does have a big effect. You can see that he's missing internal rotation of the left hip. That imbalance in itself at his wattage levels is a serious red light for injury. But Johnson either doesn't know or he's overlooking it.
There's nothing that I could point out, and I don't think there's anything that his coach Michael Ford could possibly improve on as far as the technique.
Except for the biggest sprinter killer of them all, called pelvic imbalance.
There's nothing that I could point out.
And this is because while Michael might think he's analysing biomechanics, all he's really doing is commenting on style. And while Mr. Bromell is a stylish runner, he has a major biomechanical flaw. But Michael adopts the guise of track profit. So let's see how Mr. Bromell did in subsequent seasons. Now, I'm not criticising Mr. Bromell. He's obviously a massive talent. I have no idea what happened to him. Data doesn't tell that story. But is the reason that he didn't really progress beyond that 2015 year because he had people around him like Johnson who couldn't see the issues and didn't really know how to help him get to the next level healthy? I don't know, but there is a possibility that it plays a part. As for Johnson, he's a great athlete, and he combined that with a stoic philosophy for life that made him a formidable adversary mentally. But his fame and reputation seems to have prevented him from putting in the same level of dedication into becoming an expert in the analysis of track and field. Either that, or the models that he's been using all his career to understand track and field are actually inaccurate. And he and those around him have gotten away with those models because they're enormously talented and they only recruit other enormously talented athletes. And if you base your model on only one type of person rather than the spectrum of people, you develop a warped understanding, because what you can get away with and the factors that you have to concentrate on change as you become more proficient. For me, this is a good example of the fact that you can be world class in one arena and be distinctly mediocre in others. But in this age of free opinions, the answer is not to cancel him or anyone. Don't take the mic from Mike. Just realize this. Don't automatically trust an authority figure just because they present as one. And that includes me. Being able to change perspectives when analyzing accurate facts increases intelligence. Being able to change facts to suit your feelings decreases your intelligence. And you'll end up with the wrong conclusion. Your opinion increases in value the more you research and think about it, not the more people agree with it. Bearing points 2 and 3 in mind. So do your own critical thinking, weigh it up for yourself, and decide where you fall. So I'm not sure that the people in the comment section did.
Great analysis, actually. I'm impressed with the quality content of this segment.
Love listening to Johnson. Best pundit in sport, never mind athletics.
Michael Johnson is simply the best when it comes to track analysis. Well, total agreement with Mr. Johnson.
Michael Johnson's great coach.
I doff my hat to you, Monseigneur Michael Johnson. The menace is on yours.
As British athletics fans, we are privileged to have Michael Johnson and his wealth of knowledge and experience on the BBC.
Michael's making track look great. I love everything he says. Genuinely awesome analysis.
Dropping gems. I don't know, maybe the athletics community is just so starved of knowledge and analysis that anything sounding even vaguely intelligent is greeted unchecked with open arms and gratitude. But maybe we've also erroneously accepted the concept that the ex-athlete is the perfect person to talk about athletics, as opposed to understanding that we need to seek the counsel of the ex-athlete's coach. The career path for the ex-athlete is to become an international pundit, but isn't that a more suitable path for the ex-coach? I mean, it was their analysis of the problem and their problem-solving skills that were world-class.
Well, that's the first and only sensible thing I've ever heard you say.
Or maybe people are just dazzled by a haircut, deep voice, and a sports jacket.
I hope this helps. Bust me a thumbs up, because let me tell you something. Have your say in the comments, Bay. And BBC or Sky, I'm available for sprint analysis if you need anyone. I can do Mondays and every third Thursday in the month, 2 till 3:45. No problem.
No work ethic. Any self-respecting coach pundit would work to the least 4.
And if you like my wonderful, brilliant, incredible vibe, I could go on and on, then please subscribe. Whoop!